Hello and welcome to ATN World News. I'm Leah, and it's great to be with you, the audience around the nations today. I'm so thrilled to be able to tell you that today we have with us a huge CCM artist, Bob Bennett. Really love Bob's music. You check out his music on iTunes or even go to YouTube and listen to it. You'll be blessed. I'd like to give a little backdrop on Bob. You know, Bob had an album, Matters of the Heart, and it's an album recording Contemporary Christian Music Magazine voted 1982's Album of the Year. And he's just been cranking them out ever since. There's some that I listen to when I want to really connect emotionally and want to connect deep. He's a deep writer, deep artist, great voice. And with that, I'd like to say good afternoon, Bob.
Hi, Leah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being able to visit with you again.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. And this time, instead of radio, we get to see you. Thanks to modern technology, it's just marvelous.
Yep.
And I tell you what, I say this all the time. Deep lyrics, very touching. One of my favorite songs, I'm going to ask Bob a little bit behind the scenes. I have a couple that's deep. One is... one of them, who would ever think, except Bob Bennett, right? To write a song about the madman's point of view. Seriously. We all know the scripture, how there was a man who had a legion of demons, and only Jesus could really touch him to get it out. And Bob wrote that song from that madman's point of view. It's very poetically done. It's incredible. Bob, what was your thinking behind that when you created that song?
Well, it was sort of, I have to be honest with you, it was sort of created under combat conditions. Not to hang the dirty laundry out right off the bat, but I wrote an entire record about this prior to writing and recording Man of the Tombs, which is what the song is that you're talking about. But I was divorced in the early 90s. And, you know, that's horrible on all kinds of fronts. It's horrible in general, no matter who you are or what your belief system is. But that kind of failure on your resume is pretty antithetical to what we Christians say that we believe and what we value and what we aspire to. So when a marriage breaks up, it's never good. And I was separated from my wife and my children and sort of praying and longing and screaming out that this wasn't going to happen, and then trying to make sense of my part in all of that. And so I was actually staying in a place by myself. And you know how you sometimes do, Leah, when you're looking for anything that you can hang your hat on. We play what we call, it's kind of serious in this context, but we call Bible roulette, which is you just open up the Bible, you're trying to find anything, any word from the Lord that can be any kind of comfort. Well, I stumbled upon the story of the Gadarene demoniac. And as I read through his story, what became very clear to me is that although my circumstances did not match his one-to-one, I wasn't demon-possessed as far as I knew, and I wasn't living out in the middle of a graveyard, and yet the fact that this man was isolated, he cut himself, he was self-destructive, he was just full of trouble, so it sounds a little strange to say it now, but I could identify with that pain and that kind of that horrible behavior. And what came to me, and forgive me, it's going to take longer to introduce the song than it is going to be to sing it, but what it put me in mind of, Leah, is that although this man was not a monster, he was a human being, he was capable of monstrous things. And that's the good news and the bad news about human behavior, is that we're capable of great good and we're capable of great, like, really not good. And so as I read through his story, I thought, oh my God, this is me. And so that's really what led to the writing of the song. And as the song progresses and Jesus eventually delivers the man, and he is then in his right mind, that's really the end that we all want. We want for the severity of our circumstances to be alleviated a little bit. We want to have a moment's peace. We want to be sitting at the feet of Jesus as this man eventually was. That's the jackpot. That's what we want. So that's a big, sprawling introduction to Man of the Tombs.
That's completely awesome that was behind it. Bob will play that for you in a minute, and believe me, people, this is a treat. I mean, it's just an absolute treat. Another song that I think has affected a lot of people because when I talk to people, they'll go, wow, you know that song, You're Always Welcome Here, about a house is known by the company it keeps. Bob, I got to say something directly to you here. I know that that's about a man who, you know, Christ has been knocking at the door a while and he's letting him in. But for those who even received Christ as a youngster, like I did, I relate to this song to let my grief out. Like the lyrics that are in it, when I cry, the roof leaks, and when the wind blows, the walls are weak. But a house is known by the company it keeps, because it reminds us, as David said in Psalms 103, that we are frail. You know, we're fragile, and that we really need Christ for our strength and foundation in the home. But I'd really love for you to speak to our audience a little bit more of where your mind and heart was when You're Always Welcome Here about that song.
Well, of course, the idea of Jesus knocking at the door is found in Revelation, and Jesus is talking to the church at Laodicea, and he has a pretty their behavior, and but he ends that indictment with, "But behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if you open the door, I will come in and dine with you, and you with me." So, in the context of the song, that's what's going on. But as you've alluded to, the church has always, and I think correctly to do so, has always used that imagery as the notion of let Jesus into the house that is your life and let him have access to all the rooms. There's actually a very famous tract, which I did not know. I knew nothing about this when I wrote You're Welcome Here, called My Heart, Christ's Home. And if your audience would go to a search engine and Google My Heart, Christ's Home, it's a tract by Robert Boyd Munger that was written, I don't know, probably 60 years ago now. And it kind of talks about the same thing, that we sometimes will have the house of our lives, and sometimes we'll close off rooms and try to hide things in them. And, you know, everybody's got a junk drawer. Some people have a junk room. But Jesus lovingly wants access to all of those broken places. And you're right. Sometimes we just need to let it out, you know, let it out in general, and then direct it and let it out, knowing that he is willing to take it with us and walk with us in it.
That's just beautiful. And that's the truth. I mean, these songs are healing. And Bob's style of music is really soothing when you hear his voice. And the way he plays that acoustic guitar is better than most people. You'll find that out in a minute. Bob, I wanted to ask you, is there, and I'm sure you've been asked this 100 times, so this is 101 times, is there a favorite song of yours that touches you and moves you the most, and why?
Well, I mean, songwriters have a tendency to have the most affection for whatever has come latest, because we have that assurance of, oh goodness, I'm so glad I can still do this, and you know, these songs. But in the final analysis, and I know this sounds a little evasive, but picking a favorite song would be like picking a favorite child. Now, if you ask me, what song do you hope outlives you? What song do you hope gets heard by the most people? Probably Man of the Tombs would be the song. I feel like that's, you know, it sounds a little overly dramatic and a little too self-important for me to say, that's the song I was born to write. But when I think about that song coming, you know, as it did, and me being the guy to do it, you know, I do feel a sense of, you know, like I was on a mission, and that it all worked out okay for me to, you know, to write it.
I think you are a man with a mission. So, listen, that was wonderful insight to some of Bob's favorite and most loved tunes. And right now, I'm handing this over to Bob to play for you whatever he wishes. Thank you, Bob.
All right. Well, since you mentioned Man of the Tombs, it's a big, sprawling, large attention span song, but hopefully your audience will be patient with me as I work through the details of the song. Again, this is the man who was possessed by the legion of devils. He has a dramatic encounter with Jesus in a graveyard, which is a not too subtle indication of how he views himself and what kind of lack of hope he has in his life. And yet Jesus knows what's happening. He delivers the man, and at the end of the song, the man is dressed and seated in his right mind at the feet of Jesus. And that's the end game. Man of the tombs, he lives in a place where no one goes, and he tears at himself and lives with a pain that no one knows. He counts himself dead among the living. He knows no mercy and no forgiving. Deep in the night, he's driven to cry out loud. Can you hear him cry out loud? Man of the tombs, possessed by an unseen enemy, he breaks every chain that mistakes his freedom for being free. Shame and shamelessness equally there, like a random toss of a coin in the air. Man of the tombs, he's driven to cry out loud. Underneath this thing that I've become, fading memory of flesh and blood. I curse the womb, I bless the grave. I've lost my heart, I cannot be saved. Like those who fear me, I'm afraid. Like those I've heard, I can feel pain. Naked now before my sin, and these stones that cut against my skin. Some try to touch me, but no one can. For a man of the tombs I am. Down at the shoreline, two sets of footprints meet. One voice is screaming, other voice begins to speak. And only a moment and only a word, the evil departs like a thundering herd. Man of the tombs, he hears this cry out loud. Underneath this thing that you become, I see a man of flesh and blood. I give you life beyond the grave. I heal your heart, I come to save. No need to fear, be not afraid. This man of sorrows knows your pain. I come to take away your sin and bear its marks upon my skin. When no one can touch you, still I can. For Son of God I am. rest now and seated, clean in spirit and healthy of mind, man of the tombs. He begs to follow but must stay behind. He'll return to his family with stories to tell of mercy and madness, heaven and hell. Man of the tombs, soon he will cry out loud, underneath this thing that I once was, now I'm a man of flesh and blood. I have a life beyond the grave. I found my heart, I can now be saved. No need to fear, I am not afraid. This man of sorrows took my pain. He comes to take away our sin and bear its marks upon his skin. I'm telling you this story because man of the tombs I was. Man of the tombs I was.
Thank you, Bob. What a wonderful message given in such a talented way. I'm sure the people were blessed by it. Bob, I'm going to ask you for another song of your choosing, if you don't mind.
Okay. Do you want to hear You Welcome Here, or would you want to hear maybe something else?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I love that song.
You mentioned it. I thought it might make sense. Lord, I hear you knocking. You've been knocking at the door. How long have you been waiting? Seems I never really heard you before. Kinda let the place go, ashamed of what you'll find. But you can make yourself at home if you're sure that you don't mind. 'Cause when I cry, the roof leaks, and when the wind blows, the walls are weak, but a house is known by the company it keeps. And I feel better now that you're near, and I want to make it clear, Jesus, from now on, you're always welcome here. There are dark rooms deep inside me where your light has never shone, and I tried to hide inside them, but I guess you've always known. One day you would call me, and I'd awaken from my sleep, and you'd take me just the way I am, and you promised me you'd keep me. 'Cause when I cry, the roof leaks, and when the wind blows, the walls are weak, but a house is known by the company it keeps. And I feel better now that you're near, and I want to make it clear, Jesus, from now on, you're always welcome here. Jesus from now on. You're always welcome here.
So beautiful. Okay, I cried. When I hear that song, it just gets to me, and it seems like every time, I cry. Such a touching song, and I thank you for doing this little mini concert that you've done
No, happy
for
to do it.
yeah, for our audience. I know they're psyched, And Bob, anything you want to give them from your website or how they can buy your music?
Yeah. There's a couple different ways. I'm just at bobbennett.com. Pardon me. BOBBENNETT.com. I also have a Facebook page, although I have too many friends now, but I do have a singer-songwriter musician Facebook page that you can check out if you're so inclined toward Facebook. My music is available for, if you want to download it, you can get it on iTunes and Amazon. You can stream on Apple Music and Spotify and Pandora and different places like that. And there's lots of stuff on YouTube, as you mentioned before, of varying degrees of quality and vintage. But a lot of people have pointed their cameras and phones at me and put things up on YouTube, so it's a lot of fun. And then there's a lot of the studio albums that are also posted there as well. So if you're inclined to go check this stuff out, there is no excuse in not being able to find something somewhere. And so we'd be happy to have you aboard. And whether you're a longtime listener or whether I'm meeting you for the first time through ATN World News and through Leah, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob, for being with us today. We were incredibly blessed. And until next time, I'm Leah reminding you that God loves you.